Hey guys, welcome to week 6. Alright, so by now we've all turned in our proposals and we've got a pretty good idea about how we want to begin approaching the final paper. I would hope now that we've started to gather resources, gather sources that we think might be useful in crafting that final paper for analysis. So, first of all, and this is provided in text at the top of the lesson resources page, you can go back and read it there as well. So first of all, know that I will respond to your proposals quickly, within a couple of days generally. With a large project like this, it is important that you know you are on the right page before progressing too far. And I intend to help ensure that that is true. You'll get some good feedback, hopefully, at least I like to think that it's good feedback, from me relatively quickly. Mostly I'll approve these. If I think that your proposal needs a little bit of work, I'll tell you how to improve it. I'm not just going to say unacceptable. I'll say, look, doesn't work in this way, here's how we can fix it. So this week we're going to focus on the research part of the research essay. Be prepared to put in some time. And I have to say that up front. This is going to take a little bit of time. Since this can be a very taxing aspect of the project, when we're researching, we don't know what we're going to find. We don't know what we're going to have to read. We don't know necessarily if we're going to find anything at all. And I know that can be very, very frustrating for those of us that like to have all of our ducks in a row before we, begin something. But that is unfortunately the process of research. You never really know what you're going to find before you begin. It's also the exciting part of research because you're always going to uncover something new. So, you're going to be the first one making the argument that you're making, using the sources that you're using. And that element of it is, I think it makes it all worth it. So if nothing else, this can be one of the most unpredictable aspects of academic writing. It could even change where you think the trajectory of the project you planned on writing last week. Sometimes we'll come across new information that changes the way that we fundamentally think about our arguments, and we have to begin again, which is perfectly fine. We'll look at how to do research both using the library's website and using the internet, since the assignment does allow for both types of sources, so book sources or electronic sources. Our goal for the end of the week is to have an annotated bibliography done. An annotated bibliography is it's a common collegiate assignment. You'll probably be writing a few more before you complete your degree, depending upon the courses you're enrolled in. The skills needed to create one are valuable in workplace writing as well. Basically, an annotated bibliography requires you to find 3 sources. Your final essay will need to have 5, so this will be most of the sources you need for your final essay, but not all of them. But it may be difficult to find that many and write the annotations for each one in a short week. So how does an annotated bibliography function? Well, we have a couple of lessons that cover that in detail, but let me give you the brief rundown before we go into the detailed stuff later. Basically, it's a chance for you to gather your sources together, provide the full citation, so heading of the annotated bibliography, full citation, underneath that you'll provide an annotation. And an annotation basically gives a summary of the central arguments of the source, describes the main things that they're talking about, main things they're arguing, and how successfully they do or do not do this. Basically, points you agree, points you disagree. You evaluate the source in your annotation. And what this is meant to do, it's meant to give you a quick reference guide for when you go back and work on your final paper. So you can, like 2 or 3 weeks down the road, when we're working on our final papers, putting the finishing touches in, we're like, man, what was that source I read? Well, here's the source, but what was it about? Go back to your annotations, and you've got a full summary of the source and its central arguments. You'll know, okay, I need to look in here because this addresses this aspect of my central argument and could provide some useful quotes or useful support. This is a good practice to get into when doing any kind of research, especially later on in your college careers when you're dealing with using more than 5 sources. So 5 sources, maybe we can keep a handle on that pretty easily. But what about when you're using 10, 15, 20 sources? All of a sudden things get more complex, and having an annotated bibliography can help to streamline that process. So Unit 3, Lesson 5, what is an annotated bibliography, talks about that in detail. Unit 3, Lesson 6, starting the research topic. This is going to let you know basically how to start writing. A lot of people, the biggest problem when it comes to doing a research paper is figuring out where to start. And this will help you get kicked off on that path. Lesson 7, search terms, navigating library websites, finding articles in databases. This goes into detail about how you can use some of the resources that are available through the Ohio Dominican Library. and through our access to various academic databases. You can probably figure some of this out on your own, but the lesson will help to refine that process and cut down the amount of time you spend in your search, which is really what it's all about, right? Getting the most amount of material in the shortest amount of time, because we're all working adults. We've all got stuff to do. We don't have time to spend 6-10 hours searching around in the library. Lesson 8, evaluating online sources. So, as most of us know by now, not everything on the internet is equally factual or equally weighted in terms of its academic rigor. You can have a lot of really good information, and you can have some complete garbage. Lesson 8 is a lesson in evaluating online sources that for their academic credibility or for their usefulness to writing an academic style paper, or any paper really for college. Let you know what to look for in order to weed out the sources that are less useful, and what to look for in order to locate sources that are going to be more useful and more central to articulating your arguments. And then lesson 9, it's about the planning process. And I know a lot of people, they like to just dive in on papers, and that's one way of approaching things. But for this course, it's all about slowing things down, starting from the basics. And in this case, part of what will help you slow down is to plan your paper out before you begin writing a word. Gather all of your material together, get the sources you think you're going to be using, have a general schematic of the kinds of arguments you're going to be using, and then start piecing that together in a way that flows rhetorically the way you want it to flow. This is about exerting greater control over our message, greater control over the rhetoric that we're employing, and greater control over how audiences are going to read what it is that we write. In addition to this, we have the usual lesson quizzes for lessons 5, 6, and 7. We have a homework assignment for lesson 8. The homework assignment for lesson 8 is basically, we have an evaluation form asking some of the same questions covered in the lesson. I would like for you guys to download a form and fill it out while evaluating one of the sources that you plan to use in your essay. So this is kind of a dry run, and you can really use this to do an annotation for the annotated bibliography portion of the project. Remember that the questions are not quiz questions, so answer in a more conversational tone. Pay attention to what you think needs the most attention. I'm not going to give you too many instructions on this. It's mostly going to be what's useful to you, what sticks out to you, what's interesting to you, what you think is going to help in your essay. So, these are more free form, but I do expect you to take them seriously. I can tell how much work you put in, basically. And then in addition to that, the annotated bibliography, as always, due Sunday by 11:59 p.m. The instructions for the annotated bibliography are listed under the Unit 3 assignment for bibliography here. Remember, you should have at least 3 sources. In this case, we're going to cite it in APA. All of them, they need to be alphabetized, and they need to have both. You need to have both library and web sources. So I need to see print sources, and I need to see at least one source that is internet-based, just to make sure that we have a handle down on how to evaluate online sources and print sources and that kind of thing. Whether you choose to use these in your final paper is ultimately up to you. I would encourage you to pick sources you think you're going to use in your final paper, and I'm going to mandate that all sources be related back to your topic in general. But that being said, later on, if you read something that changes your mind, it's okay to axe these. You're not married to these sources, but the final paper will need to have 5 sources. All right, so we've got a lot of writing to do this week. I'm going to try to get those proposals back to you just as quickly as possible. And I look forward to seeing your annotated bibliographies and going into more detail there. This is going to be fun. Have a good week, guys.